Alright, so in today's video, I got the Platinum Trophy on Mafia, the Old Country. This is the absolute newest game that's out right now and the newest Mafia game in the series, which has been long awaited. It's been almost 10 years between Mafia 3 and the new addition to the series, but as I said, I got every single trophy inside of the game today, and it was, definitely an experience. I played this on drop here in the US, so I began my journey at a ripe 12 a.m. and there obviously wasn't any guides available for the game, so we were really going in balls out shaven style. But there is a trophy from playing through the game on hard, so I did make sure to do that, and spoiler, it really isn't that bad on hard difficulty. Anyways, kicking off the story, it began in usual Mafia fashion. You play as a character named Enzo inside of Sicily, which is where the game takes place today, but you essentially just go from rags to riches with this kid, just like any other Mafia game does. And for those of you that have played Mafia 1, which I imagine is most of you, this game's story will remind you a lot of that game because the two have near identical story flows, and these games are literally the same thing just with some minor details in how the events unfold. It's actually shocking how much alike the two are. But you first play the prologue of the story, and in total there is 14 chapters, by the way, and you are essentially just inside of a worker camp as Enzo because he is sort of a slave to the Mafia right now as just a common worker, and the conditions of our establishment are pretty rough. But our boy here named Gaetano and Enzo have been saving up some change over time to get out and head back to America, where Enzo's uncle is allegedly at. Now, this is kind of a weird plot point looking back at it because this whole American pipe dream does not get brought up again until the final chapter of the game, so it's just kind of confusing as to why Enzo never went in the time between, but whatever, the dude has memory loss because the entire mine blew up and we were in there as it was happening. And we were inside of it because we got sent inside to search for other miners that are also dead, just like our boy now is, because he dropped his bag of money and then he went back for it. This is what happens when you're greedy on God. Anyways, Enzo did make it out alive, and back outside we confronted the mine leader, who is a very infamous villain of this game that will be a problem for us for a majority of the game. But his name is Il Merlo, and after some trash talk we knife fight him actually, which is a new combat feature of this game. And if I'm being honest, I can't remember if you actually got a knife in the other Mafia games as well when you did stealth, but you definitely didn't do this knife fight mechanic, and it's super fun the first few times you do use this in boss battles, but it does get dry because this is literally the only way you ever fight bosses in this game. It's insane how the developers made one singular cool feature and then said, alright guys, that's enough work for the last 9 years, we aren't going to come up with another cool fighting style, and we're just going to use the same one for our already short story. Not a fan if you can't tell. But you do have to win the fight to progress the story, and we don't end up killing him, but instead the mine falls apart more, and then you slide down a little gravel hill, jump on a horse, and ride away from the camp, finishing the prologue chapter and getting the first trophy of the game. The next chapter then had the real Mafia story begin. First, you do just sneak around trying to escape Merlot because he was hot on our asses after all of that we just did to him. And we almost got out, but he caught us at the very end, and then ended up getting caught himself by another Mafia member from a different clan named Don Teresi, who would end up being probably the most major character of the game. But he essentially yelled off Merlot due to him conducting this fugitive hunt on the Don's land, and in turn we are his problem to deal with, so the Don basically just recruited Enzo as another worker for the clan and we got welcomed in. You then pretty much just become their bitch for a little bit and we do farm chores. I love this Pete Gaming in the Big 25 doing chores like the end of Red Dead Redemption 2 on God. But after that we had to get ready for this meal, and in doing so I got given a charm, which I then equipped for a stat boost and I got a trophy from that. But then the chapter did end and I got yet again another story trophy. The next chapter was then still pretty basic. We got a knife tutorial from Luca actually, who's one of the major side characters of the story and kind of Enzo's best friend I guess throughout it. But then we just followed him into the city and I was attempting to grab collectibles as I saw them in this game, but I pretty much failed in doing that well. However, I did find my first newspaper right here for a trophy, one of 50 by the way. Yes, Mafia is back, baby. Back with annoying ass collectibles for that matter. But after that we ended up attending a horse race, which was revolutionary entertainment in the year of 1902, and our boy Enzo got thrown into it as a rider because we didn't have anybody else to do it. So the objective was to obviously win the race, and I honestly barely did win it, just on the very last stretch. However, after that we got praise from all with our major W. But that wasn't the chapter's end because it just keeps on going, and that's kind of a trend which isn't really a bad thing in this game. It just feels like the game's chapters have so many parts to them, it's kind of funny. Like, you always expect it to end, but then it just keeps on going. Again, it's not a bad thing, but replaying them later, it's a very annoying thing. However, in the second half of this chapter, we actually got to escort the Don's daughter named Isabella. Yeah, she can get it. God damn, we are down bad, boys. Even on summer, there's cold nights, don't forget it. But after a little stroll delivering wine to people in the city, a bunch of those bad dudes from Merlot's clan show up to kill us and the Don's daughter, which in turn leads to another knife fight. So obviously, we had to win the fight, and it functioned in the exact same way as the first first one of these. And you remember my rant on them, right? Yeah, this is why. It's just the same mechanic over and over and over. But after winning the fight, we saved the day for now. Luca also ran over and saw what happened, scolding us a tad bit, but then the chapter did end and another story trophy popped. Now in the beginning of the next chapter, there is also a slightly missable trophy from meeting Isabella in secret to get some of that ravioli if you don't. However, this is actually just a side mission or side objective within the chapter. There is loads of these as you play, and this is the only one that gives you a trophy, so that's kind of odd, but it's okay, I guess. Long story short, an old dude spoiled the party. Studies are saying that women are dating older men nowadays, so, you know, what the f. But here's that trophy anyways. In this chapter, however, we just rode around with a few of the Don's men and other side characters, going around the countryside, picking up payments from people that are under our protection, whether they like it or not. And one of these folks didn't want to pay, so I pointed my gun right at them, and they, decided otherwise, letting us into the back room to collect payment ourselves, and we encountered the first locked safe of the game. Now, there's a trophy in this game from unlocking a safe without the combination. So to get this, I just found the combo first, and then backed up my save to before I went into the room, and then I remembered the code, and then I put it in. It was actually a super easy code, which then unlocked the safe, getting me the trophy pop. But the rest of this chapter is actually quite a lot of fun, to be honest, especially compared to the chapters we've already played, because you then go do more payment runs. And while we were at the mines, a dude was also being a fuss and trying to start a riot. So, being the good boss we are, we just stabbed him repeatedly. Workers' rights didn't exist back then, since blue hair couldn't be done on women to give them their power. But moving on, you also go to a shipping yard of sorts to retrieve some whiskey that we needed from an enemy clan, and you had to stealth through all of this. But stealth in this game is actually pretty well done, making it fairly easy to, do it at all. But after that, there was one more little job we had to do. Sorry for the language. But we had to go clear this house of bandits that were absolutely infesting it. And this was probably the hardest part of the chapter, just because on hard, the combat is slightly hard. It's really not awful, but you don't get any aim assist on this difficulty. And I actually found that easier to aim than with this game's aim assist because it low-key sucks ass. But after you do clear out the bandits, all is well, and the chapter ends with another story trophy. The next chapter then had us join Isabella for a little bit of riding. Sign me up any day of the week, please. But in doing so, I also knocked off an easy trophy from just customizing a horse, so here is that. You then just ride around with her up to this little sort of lookout down at some ruins. She also touched us, and I am a victim. Oh my god! But then you take the first picture of the game, and yes, this is another type of collectible. Who doesn't love picture collectibles? So fun. Oh yeah, we also then rode this car around for a little bit because they have those now. And it was fun and all, but this whole time trial thing the game was trying to get us to do was sort of meaningless because off in the distance, Isabella got ambushed by the enemy clan, and we had to just drive over and try to save her. Inside of all this combat, I also did end up getting my first combat trophy of the game from killing 20 enemies with a repeater, so here is that. And that type of trophy is also a big part of this list, by the way, spinning across many weapons. But after you do progress past the enemies and reach this cutscene trigger, you see her get taken by the enemies and we chase after her. And you kind of just have to travel behind them for a while because they're dropping fire out of the back of the car. Eventually, you do end up getting a horse though, and then really riding up on them. Finally, jumping into the back of the wagon, and then pretty much just saving the day by kind of dragging good old Isabella out of the thing. And she was so grateful, she just kissed us right on the spot. I'm so hard right now. But remember, this is the Don's daughter, so yeah, I don't know how exactly that's gonna go. Also, real fast, if you guys remember the Mafia 1 story, kind of had a similar or exact thing going on with the main character falling for a girl who's already a part of the Mafia that is dangerous to date, becomes a problem, and yeah, that's why I don't really think this game is great, because it's just a mimic of the first one, but whatever. But yeah, this chapter actually wasn't done yet. I have no clue how, but it just kept on going. And you chase the enemy clan even further into their caves, so they're those kind of people now. I see why they have fire bombs. While in the caves, however, I did get 30 headshots for another trophy which popped right here. You then knife fight one final boss dude at the very end of the chapter to save another one of our homies who got captured. And again, it's just the same exact fight formula. Once winning, we finished the chapter and got the story trophy pop again. The next chapter then had us take a bit more of an offensive approach to things because we can't keep on getting attacked that surprise. It's just no way to live. So we got sent in stealth style to go knock some people up in the middle of the night. And while in stealth, I did also find a coin, which was a special coin, and it gave me a trophy with a few extra chromosomes. But on this stealth portion of the game, you also did have to do it completely in stealth without being seen and raising alarm, because a trophy called Phantasma has got them from doing that, and it's exactly what I did do, which then gave me the trophy right here. But after making it inside the house we were after and capturing the guy we were after, it did cause alarm, and the rest of this area had a ton of combat. In this combat, I also managed to get 20 kills total with the Lupara gun, and here's that trophy pop. But this entire mission had us kidnapping a man named Ludovici, who we then threw over our shoulder, put into the car, and then drove all the way up to the top of a hill overlooking a quite scenic picnic area, to be honest. I mean, if you're gonna get executed, I can't think of a more peaceful location. But also Enzo got ordered to do the deed because we are still a grunt within the clan, despite, you know, f***ing the Don's daughter. And Enzo, you know, he's a man of honor, so we just refused to. And in doing this refusal, we got shot in the head, so yeah, that was a trophy. After respawning though, I didn't hesitate one bit the next time I got my chance. And in doing that, we ended up getting indoctrinated into the clan as a formal member within a very sus ceremony. I think they also took off his foreskin, if that gives any context clues for you educated folks out there. But the rest of the chapter just had the boys partying. You know, we hit up the brothel as you do because AIDS don't exist yet, and then you do call it a night and the trophy pops from the chapter. The following chapter was then very long, and I'm gonna say it, a bit bland, mostly because it's an entirely stealth mission again, but there wasn't any trophies to excite us, and we just had to sneak around like a little bitch baby. Eventually, cover does get blown though, as it always does, and all-out war and rage ensued. And then we did do another knife fight against a boss enemy, and you actually do have to lose this fight, I think. If not, I still did, so yeah, if you fail, you're fine. But the boys drove up to save our asses, quite literally. They then drive us back home, and upon entering, look who decided to show up. Isabella. And yeah, Enzo lost his virginity. What a dog. But that's the chapter's end, and here's the trophy. The next chapter then focused heavily on a race coming to town with real cars, and the boys managed to get our hands on an absolute speed demon. And there was a trophy from beating this train that was coming, and I think you have to do this for the story anyway, so I'm not sure if it's really missable, but I did do it regardless, and I got the trophy right here. You then actually do this big race in town as the driver once more, because as a former horse racing champion, it obviously transfers over to car racing. And if you guys have played the first Mafia game, then you'll remember that it has an infamous race that is insanely challenging to win on hard difficulty, which was required for that game's platinum. But thankfully, this race is not hard at all. The only real hard thing about it was controlling the car, which I did struggle with. But it had checkpoints as you raced, which were very favorable to us, and I abused them. But in all seriousness, this race was not a challenge, and I won it right here for the trophy, so GG 2K Studios, I might not hate you after all. Before the chapter ended though, we also rizzed up Isabella once more, our lover if you want to call her that. But then it ends with a race-winning photo and the chapter trophy pop. The following chapter was then a bit bland and short as a matter of fact, which is nice I guess, but you pretty much just had to save Cesare, who was one of the Don's boys that got captured. However, once we do save him, he then just kills this other dude, so that's cool. And that basically ends the chapter with the trophy popping. Very short, like I said, and she also did. The next chapter then had another goal on it for a trophy, just to sneak into the foreman's office without alerting anybody once more. On the way there, though, I did find my first mystery fox of the game for a trophy. And by the way, we're nearing the end of the story, and I just found my first one. This is the absolute worst collectible of the game, by the way. It's actually disgusting. But then I did make it to the foreman's office pretty easily, actually. However, inside of the office, the dude was no longer with us, and then the entire factory just began to blow up. Who doesn't love explosions, am I right? Okay, maybe the Japan. Anyways, while fighting our way out, I got another combat trophy from 20 kills with the pump shotgun, which popped right here. And then there was yet again another knife fight, and yeah, it was, yeah. You then walk out of the factory as it's literally crumbling and burning down. Enzo is Aro farming in the 19th century. That's crazy. But then the chapter did end, and here's the trophy. The following chapter was then quite fun and actually a bit messed up. But we were all attending this baptism ceremony for somebody's kid at the church. And in the midst of all of that, the motherfucker from the mines way back in the prologue showed up, and he just started to snipe people like that one American shooting. I can't remember which one. There's like 156 of them now. But you had to take cover and play it passive until reaching the tower. Then you climb it, knife fight him again. There's then a bit of a chase, but still more knife fighting. And I also did have to combat some real enemies, and I got a trophy from 10 kills with explosives. But then you actually chase after the guy in a horse, and he luckily ended up crashing his car because Lord knows we weren't going to catch him. We got one singular horsepower on this bitch. However, upon confronting him, good old Enzo wanted to give a little speech to the class, and it gave time for Bo to come to his senses, and he legitimately almost killed us, but thank God that Luca showed up and took him down, finally killing that evil man. Which also finished the chapter, and here's that story trophy. The next chapter was also pretty combat orientated, but there was a trophy on it from destroying 10 cars while escaping the Tunnara, which is a tuna facility from what I gather. Legitimate businesses, we love to see it. But destroying 10 cars isn't really that hard, and especially on hard difficulty, you kind of have to do this because if you don't destroy them at a fast manner, you're just gonna die from them. But the method is to shoot at engines, obviously. Thank God they didn't have mid-engines back then. But once I destroyed 10, I got the trophy pop. Unfortunately, though, in all of this combat, our boy Luca, who was Enzo's best friend and sort of mentor, ended up taking at least one stray bullet and then bleeding out on a table in the bar. A cinematic way for a Mafia man to die, I can't lie, but that was the chapter's ending and the trophy popped. And this is sort of when the game's vibe goes a bit dark for both Enzo's story and just the chapters in general. The Don is pissed off, Enzo's in grief, and good old sweet Isabella also drops this bomb that she is pregnant. Turns out Enzo couldn't pull out of a fucking driveway, and he is now a part of the Don's family forever.
bitch.
But the next chapter had us do a thing I like to call the John Wilkes Booth Simulator. We infiltrated a play to assassinate a man. Shout out to Abe. On the way, though, to our target, I just killed 20 enemies in general with knife takedowns for a trophy, and here's that. But then you do assassinate the guy, and I don't know what's going on in Enzo's mind, but he literally could not have butchered this in any worse way. The guy just let him fall down right into the audience, bleeding and dead. Talk about blowing your cover, my god. But then you do have to fight your way out. It all gets set up blaze like all things do in this game. And then we also did knife fight another big bad clan leader. I have no comment on the knife fighting. I'm done with it. But before the chapters end, Isabella and Enzo come up with a sort of escape plan because the Don is losing it, and they both want to get away from it all. But then the chapter does end and the trophy pops. So we are now on to the final chapters of the game, and this next one had us go assassinate all the remaining enemy clan leaders still in some power and control. The first dude being named Mazone, and you had to do it with complete stealth, also being the first kind of major enemy we did kill without a f***ing knife battle, so that's cool. But the following guy named Caccini you had to do before he escaped the area we confronted him in general, and this is actually super easy to do if you just go blow up his car before we even confront him. I like to call this move the pre-ejaculation. Don't try it with a woman, by the way, she will not look at you the same. But then you just kill a few more enemies on the way back to the crib. After doing all of that, we got applauded by everybody because we are just so good at what we do. And then that chapter ended with another story trophy. But then the final chapter of the game began, and this is when the shit hits the fan. Essentially, Isabella and Enzo have the plan to just go to America and escape it all. It's a beautiful thing to see two madly in love people pursuing a better life filled with happiness and not murder. However, it got foiled immediately, and we got caught, so that went out the drain. Enzo then got dragged all the way back to the Don, who has been informed that we have been banging his daughter for years now. And yeah, he was a little bit upset. You pretty much just end up getting beat up and knife fighting Cesare actually. But after you do win that, you then have to fight through a load of enemies. Also, there's a volcano exploding at the same time all this is happening. Cinematic coincidence? I think not. But after all this fighting back and forth, you end up coming up to Enzo's ending with one final battle against the Don. Another f***ing knife fight. However, there was something unique about this one, and we had to beat him without taking any damage at all. Now, I definitely failed this numerous times. I'm not great at hand-to-hand combat in this game, I'll admit it. But again, this game has an amazing checkpoint system. And if you at least make it through the stage of the fight you are in, up to a little real-time cutscene, it saves your progress. And then if you reset checkpoint, it just resets you to whatever stage of the fight you were in. So it made shaving down his health without losing mine pretty easily, actually. And once you do defeat the Don without taking damage, you then get the trophy. We watch a cutscene unfold, and Enzo does indeed kill the Don, but then Cesare shows up, who Enzo thought was his friend now since we spared him before, but then he just stabs us and Enzo bleeds out. What an ending. Okay. But unfortunately, that wasn't the end of the game, because then we play as Isabella. Yes, this is a lot like in Spider-Man 2 when you play as MJ, God forbid that. Except this time we don't have any weapons and it's just kind of boring. It's not horrible, I just sort of wish the game ended with a longer cutscene. The very ending of the game, though, did have us do a little bit of fighting, which was kind of fun, not too hard though. But the game then ends with Isabella pretty much being the lone survivor of this catastrophe and then hopping on a boat to America, and yeah, that's it. I swear to God, if Mafia 5 or whatever is after this has her as the main character, we need a sex. Anyways, I got 3 trophies from that. The hard difficulty trophy, ending chapter trophy, and then just beating the game in general. So now it's basically cleanup time for this platinum. I decided to first go after all the remaining weapon trophies I had. First from getting 20 kills with precision rifles, then 20 kills with the Modelo C96, not related to the beer unfortunately, and finally 20 kills with the Vendetti, which was all I had left for those weapon trophies. I then did a few random other trophies, but not too many. The first one I got was just from customizing a car, which is very straightforward. I then fixed a broken car using the crank, which is a trophy. I also did that because the car I just broke was also the car I was using to go for the getaway driver trophy from driving 120 kilometers an hour for 15 seconds straight. And there's a great road for this on the far right side of the map, which is pretty much just straight the entire time. Once not crashing, I got that trophy also, by the way. I then jumped 40 meters with the car, which was kind of ass, and I found a good video spot for this, which worked after a few tries. Enzo also did die in the process, but he's fine. I then had one more random trophy, which was just from buying every car in the game, and you can farm money on chapter 7, by the way, just done by lock picking these 2 chests right in the beginning of it. You get around 200 each time, then just reset checkpoint and do it over and over and over. And it's honestly a great method for money, and that allowed me to buy every car pretty easily, so here's that trophy as well. I then had one more trophy before just needing collectibles and the platinum. It was called Live by the Blade, which is sort of a confusing trophy, but I just followed PowerPix's guide on it, and all you had to do was throw a knife 5 times and get a kill with it, then do 5 takedowns with another knife type, and then the trophy pops. I swear to God I did this normally, but who knows. So my last 2 trophies in this game are the collectible ones. And this is when the game just gets to major levels of abysmal dog shit diarrhea. The collectibles in this game do not track at all on the map, and by this I mean there's no way to mark them and have them show up as you drive around, run, walk, die inside. Although you can see most of them on the map, you just have to be near them. But the fact that you cannot mark them after they're on the map is just retarded, and it makes you have to constantly check the map over and over as you move. Long story short, absolutely massive shout out to this guy who found all of them and they made a video on it. I personally wouldn't have ever been able to do that myself, let alone did I even try to. I actually platinumed 2 other games in between stopping this woods grind and finishing the collectibles. That's how dumb and bad they were for people to get. But yeah, after doing all the collectibles, even with a guide, it still took me 6 hours straight of playing. But after I did find the last fox, I got both of those horrid collectible trophies, and then the platinum trophy on Mafia the Old Country. So that was the Mafia Old Country platinum trophy experience. Overall, I think the game is alright. I don't think it's by any means a masterpiece. It has a ton of annoying features, bugs. The collectibles are disgustingly bad. The post-story world is purely dead and dry. I have never seen an open world with so much potential be used so little. It's insanely disappointing. I really wish that 2K Games gave some more effort to their post-game world. They never do and probably never will though, which is unfortunate. But anyways, I would probably rate this game a solid 6 out of 10. It's just nothing new. It's nothing crazy fun, and yeah, it really doesn't impress me like I thought it would. I had some very high expectations for this game, which is why I'm being very harsh with it. But yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe.